Hi everyone, this is Integration Talks, the only podcast dedicated to software integration and integration experts. It is hosted by Francis Martins from Exalate, the most powerful integration app. Let's get started.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of Integration Talks. I'm George, co-hosting with Francis, the product manager of Exalate. And today we're joined by Amnon Kruvi from Kruvi Solutions. So Amnon, how are you doing? Good?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me today.
Good. Pleasure. As we can see from last week, my background's changed. I was in Antwerp, but we're located quite close to each other, aren't we? Which is a bit of chance, isn't it?
I just moved house to be around here, so the fact that I live maybe 10 minutes away from you now by car is quite interesting.
It's
quite fateful.
We speak with like people from all over, like all stretches of the world. So it was rather funny that we seem to be so close together. So yeah, maybe a drink after the podcast, maybe. And joined by Francis in Antwerp as well.
Yes. Also, thank you for coming by, Amnon. I'm looking forward to this conversation.
So am I.
Nice. So last week we finished off with Daniel giving us some integration advice, which was keep it simple. And yeah, I just wanted to maybe make a start with today's podcast. What was your opinion on that? Do you have an opinion on that? Do you have any thoughts?
Just maybe for our audience, maybe you can present yourself a bit.
Definitely, that would be a good idea. Go on.
So my name's Amnon Kruvi. I'm a Salesforce architect. I've designed a product that I'm selling right now on that platform, and I deal with different kinds of integration on a regular basis. I guess I'm not really here to advertise myself or what I do. We can just.
And the topic of today is to talk about a bit of the challenges of integration, especially in Salesforce context. So it's always interesting before you start to do an integration project that you know what you're starting at. Yeah. All right. So.
Indeed.
So we were talking about keeping it simple.
Yes, definitely.
And I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm all about keeping things simple, especially if I'm the one who has to support it later on in the future. A lot of people don't keep things simple because they already know they might not stay on that project a year ahead or 2 years after, and they can just do what works at that particular moment. With that being said, sometimes simple isn't enough. Sometimes you need things that are complicated, advanced logic, and I think as long as you genuinely start out attempting to make things simple, that's great if you can do it. And if there is no simple solution to the problem that you're trying to solve, then build something that works. I think it was on some sort of show, I can't remember exactly where someone said, if the human brain was simple enough to understand, we would be too simple to understand it.
That's a good thing. Yeah, indeed. It's a good one. I have to look it up, but it's fun to think about it. But so keeping it simple is sometimes difficult because you got customers, and these customers have requirements and businesses to run. And how do you marry both, of course, right? How do you persuade your customer that doing some stuff is not going to be worth doing, right?
Well, this is a topic that comes up on every project, and I'll admit that my instinct always tells me to try and implement the solutions that the client wants because it's their business and they want to run it the way that they do. But then again, imagine if I had a problem, let's say with Windows, and I needed Windows to do something. Could I just go to Microsoft and say, I'm sorry, can I speak to Bill Gates for a moment? Mr. Gates, is there any chance you can add this button for me right here on the taskbar? That's not going to work. So in most cases, it is possible for a customer to make do with what's available if it's not if it but if you are able to build what they need without overcomplicating the solution, then I usually prefer that approach.
Mhm.
Sometimes you do overcomplicate the solution, and that causes problems later on. Of course,
Mm.
it's
So one of the reasons that you say keep it simple is to keep your life simple in the future when you have to maintain it. So so it's how much of documentation do you think is sufficient? Because yeah, well, once that you get in the more complex implementations.
you know um, I like to say that the reason that I am a good developer is because I am lazy. A
Hmm.
good developer has to be lazy and not want to do anything
Hmm.
so that you can A, build solutions that you don't have to maintain much, and B, automate everything because you don't want to do it. I will invest days of work to automate something that I don't like doing, even if it takes 5 minutes at a time. But as long as I don't have to do it again or think about it.
Okay.
Uh, and documentation, though, is is also crucial to the avoidance of maintenance for a very simple reason. When something is documented properly, it means someone else can take care of it. A
Hmm.
client can take care of it. Someone who's not a developer can take care of it. That is something that I strongly rally against. Rally for in the types of tools that I recommend using as well. So when on the platform that I work on Salesforce, there are some tools that allow you to build automation without code. Obviously, it's not as powerful. It can't do as much as you can with code. But whenever the opportunity comes up, you will see me advocating to use that instead of code when you can, because people who are not developers can modify that automation logic, even integration logic, by the way, that it can perform. And that means I don't have to do it, right? That's lazy me speaking.
Yeah.
But
Right.
somehow that also correlates with good solutions. So
Hmm.
who am I to judge?
Yeah. So also another reason we think that keep it simple is important is platforms tend to change, right? And I'm sure Salesforce evolved quite a bit in the time, in the in the structure that it's providing to implement its functionalities. So that might be another reason to keep it simple, because you never know where Salesforce or whatever vendor is going to move into to implement certain new functionalities itself.
Of course. I remember when I was new, I tried to build everything myself with code because it needed to run exactly the way I wanted it.
Mm-hmm.
And eventually, it turned out that half of the things that I spent time on and effort were provided already on the platform, or if you're building something with a particular framework, instead of building it all yourself, see if it's already there. Um, but a lot of people, it takes time to learn. Obviously, you need to read through documentation to see if something is there.
Mm-hmm.
And I admitted to being lazy, and I didn't really like doing that. But the benefit eventually outweighed that time.
Yeah. All right.
Definitely.
So the topic is a bit the challenges of um, of doing integrations on the Salesforce environment. Could you tell some of your experiences there?
Absolutely. When we think about integration, we normally think about building an application that sends a message to some kind of pre-existing, very well-defined API. So if I wanted to send an SMS message, I would pick one of the many vendors out there that provides an SMS service, read their API documentation, and then send whatever it needs to receive, which is which works very well in that kind of environment. But if we talk about a platform, so my specialty is Salesforce, but there are other cloud platforms out there. A platform is kind of like a mobile phone. On my phone, I have my contact list. And if I install an application, it can access the contact list. and another application can access the same contact list. So really, there is a pool of these shared resources that that any application can use, but it does go one step further and allows you to create your own data tables that other applications could have access to if you wanted them to. So the challenges in integration here are not strictly about how to design a message that performs a certain action. First and foremost, you have to find the integration points in terms of data. So if you, my day-to-day job revolves around worker management, and I often deal with other applications that deal with workers. So now my job is to look at those applications and see how our data models overlap on top of one another. And then we can decide whether we, if we're using a shared table that that is the exact same table, like the contact list on the phone, that's fantastic because we both have access to the exact same records, and any changes we make to them will affect the other without any need for any code whatsoever. We can even customize the same records in our own way based on our own requirements. So I can add 5 new fields and they can add 10 new fields, and we can all access them. Sometimes though, each one, each application has something very similar, but in its own table, in its own object. And at that point, we have to decide how we want to synchronize that data, if we want to synchronize that data. And the difference to a standard integration is that we don't use an API to do it. We can use triggers. We can use code that runs on a schedule, on a cron tab. And the trick is finding the best way to synchronize that data from one object to the other, or building an application that is clever enough to take the data not from your own data model, but from another application's data model.
Why make that decision? Why not go with APIs? What would be like maybe a customer requirement or a real life example for that?
So first of all, when you work on a cloud platform, there are usually some limits that are imposed. It's a shared resource, and people need to play fair with those resources. So there is an API limit, and if I start synchronizing data through the API, I'm using up that limit. Not to mention, any kind of request that I make over the internet is going to be slower than something that runs directly within the same server farm. So if we take a real life example, just today I was talking to another vendor about synchronizing our applications. They have several objects with similar data to mine, and the discussion was around whether or not what specific objects we want to synchronize between the two systems. The decision that we both agreed on is to avoid that as much as possible and only synchronize the key records that both systems need to work. And we can do that with code that sits on the platform that runs immediately and doesn't need to use any API whatsoever. It's like having the same application where you read something from one table and then immediately write it to another table in the same transaction, in the same server transaction.
So the two applications are running on the same instance, and you need to find a way to pass on data from one application to the other.
Exactly.
That's okay. And then you run it on the same platform. You don't use the APIs, which, well, there's a cost associated to when you use APIs, right? If you do a lot of requests, then you need to be on another plan.
It's true, and also we have to keep in mind that APIs are never 100% available. There are downtimes, right?
Okay.
Servers sometimes go down. It does happen. I think all the news websites panic every time WhatsApp goes down for 5 minutes, right? So
yeah, okay.
These things happen. They're unavoidable.
Yeah, right. Yeah. But aren't you concerned then that the database model can be modified, that you have to redo your integration?
There are some things that can be modified and some things that can't. So,
Mhm.
of course, anytime you're working with a vendor where the product is liable to change and be upgraded, then you run the risk of having to redo certain parts of your integration.
Mm.
But that is applicable to any system that you use. So if you go with I don't know, if you look at Twilio's API, they have dated versions of their endpoints
Hmm.
because their model changed as well somewhere along the line.
Yeah.
So their solution is to keep that backwards compatibility by offering these dated endpoints, versioned endpoints,
Mm.
and ideally any application that I would integrate with would do the same out of respect. I don't know.
Yeah. But
Um,
that's what you expect from any REST API, that it is versioned and that you have a kind of a deprecation approach for saying, well, this API will not be available from that date onwards. And well, hopefully you have enough time to make the modifications in your application. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, but that's not something that you would have with the when you access the databases directly, right?
True, but even then, the data model can change and fields can be deprecated. So
In
if
in the API, you mean?
not just in the API, in the application itself,
Yeah. Okay.
because I have to integrate directly into their data model. Let's say
Mm.
I write a value into field A, but then in the next version, field A is deprecated, and instead they use field B.
Mm.
If we were using an API, a regular REST API, then they could have um, handled it on the API level so that I wouldn't have to do anything different.
Yes.
The API could have just written the value into field B and I wouldn't even know that anything changed.
True.
But when you design integration that works directly with the other application's data model, you have to be aware of any changes that they make in the future and uh, accommodate for them.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Sorry, I'm really curious about the content, the Salesforce context and doing integrations in Salesforce context.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So really, the integration with Salesforce within a Salesforce context is about working directly on the data model of either the standard Salesforce offering or any custom offering that you need to integrate with.
Mm-hmm.
Building an application gives you access to all the standard data tables, data objects. But once you need to work with another vendor that has another application, and it's very common, then you need to start developing these relationships with them so that you do have a long-term relationship. You do hear about their roadmap and any changes that come up, because if
Mm-hmm.
you don't maintain that long-term relationship with them, um, your application is just going to stop working one day, or the integration is going to stop working once they perform an update of
Yeah.
that other app. Now, granted, if the update is done correctly, then they would test it first on a sandbox, and they would realize something is not working. But we live in the real world,
Yeah.
and we know that not everyone follows the best practices for upgrading every time, and
Mm-hmm.
mistakes do happen. I'll tell you a secret. I've made mistakes myself as well, but don't tell anyone
Yeah.
because I will deny it, just between you and me. Um,
Yeah. No, but
oh wait,
okay.
we're not live yet, right?
No, we are live, but so everyone will know. But no, the thing is indeed so. But the challenge there is it's more it's applicable for any type of platform. Whenever you do an integration with certain applications which are running on ServiceNow or on Jira, whatever, what have you, having that closer relationship with the vendor itself and understanding their roadmap is a challenge on its own. right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Which is where a personal relationship comes into play.
Mm.
If you ask me right now to call the same people that I was talking to today, I can get a phone number. I can pick up my phone and ring them. We
Yeah.
would,
You know.
we've been talking for quite a while, and any other vendor that I will integrate with, I will have some kind of contact person, ideally from the technical side,
Mm.
with whom I can talk and just write designs whenever we need something. I think that's
Right.
crucial because with regular APIs, when the platform exposes a set of actions, they are exposing a very specific set of actions. They are telling you what you are allowed to do, and they control that process. So if let's say you are allowed to create a text message, or you are allowed to create an invoice, this is how you create an invoice. But when it comes to two applications on a single platform, you don't have a list of actions that you're allowed to do. You can do whatever you want
Yeah.
until things crash in production.
Yeah. Of course. Yeah. Okay.
Nice. So I'm also interested a bit more about the challenges of obviously Salesforce integration, as well as perhaps some things that you've seen in the past with your customers. It would be interesting. And I know you speak about these relationships you have, and it's always interesting to see how integrations, change team morale and change kind of the actual day-to-day things of teams. So I don't know if you're working on anything at the moment, or you've got anything interesting about that side of things, really. With how it affects the day-to-day items of teams.
Oh, absolutely. The one thing that I've noticed in a lot of places where I worked, not even provided a service for, but just worked at, is that the right hand doesn't often know what the left hand is doing. If you go to any company and you go to their operations team and you ask, so what does finance do all day? They will tell you they browse Facebook. They're not doing anything, right? Finance are just sitting there on their laptops, ticking, and because they're not exposed to the results and to the actual product that the finance team creates. And vice versa, the finance team doesn't know what operations is doing. Maybe at best case it knows what sales are doing. And
that's in the really big companies, right?
No, not at all.
No?
It's everywhere that anything with more than 5 employees, maybe more than 10 employees, you start losing that connection between people, and you don't know what each person does, because oftentimes it's not part of your job. You don't need to know. If I'm a developer and I get a requirement from a customer to build code that does A, B, and C, I'm not going to go to the person who requested it, figure out why they asked for it, and only then build it. I'm just going to build what it says in the Jira ticket.
Yeah.
And that interaction, being able to sit with someone and understand their actual work processes, in my opinion, has been invaluable.
Yeah, definitely. To help things move forward. So I think it's fair to say that integrations obviously, push things forward in terms of business, push things forward in terms of efficiency. I don't know if you have anything in mind in your life. Are there something that's missing? Two things that are separate, two businesses, two companies that you like or that you'd love to see collaborate? Do you have any ideas there?
Yeah, well, I just moved house, right? And when you do that, everything disconnects from you. You have to update your address details everywhere. And so I made a whole list of details to update. Banks, credit cards, magazines, even shops that send you magazines and vouchers every now and again, you have to update. But the worst is probably to do with healthcare, because here it's not just about updating your address. You literally have to you have to meet a new doctor and tell them about your entire medical history again, because they don't have access to it. And that's within the same organization, supposedly. I know that there are different trusts in the NHS, but supposedly it's all the same organization that doesn't have access to different data based on branch, based on location, which strikes me as silly.
Every location has its own data set of patients. I'm not aware of the British NHS, so
Yeah, I think that again like speaks to the challenges of integrating with like like confidential information as well. You're choosing exactly what to send across and what information to integrate. Then there are definitely some challenges there. But lost connection for a second there. I think I'm still with you.
No, you're
no, it's fine. You're still there.
Yeah, so I think keeping it simple as well with that type of stuff. But I think there's definitely a need for something like that. Some sort of an app or tool to bring that across. Francis, do you have any companies that you'd want to see integrate in your life or in Belgium?
Well, I would like that every company integrates with every other company. That's
exactly, yeah.
that's what we're here for. But yeah, no. So there are many cases where you say, well, why the heck do I need to repeat myself and copy the data from one organization to another one? Yeah. Well, a lot of the information is already available. Yeah. There's a lot of initiatives. People see this need, and a lot of companies are coming up to try to solve these things. But I got the impression it's still a lot to be done before we get there. Just to give you an example, we had this discussion. We are using Slack, and then a number of our customers are using Teams. And then there's always this discussion: what are we going to use? Are we going to use Slack or are we going to use Teams? And it's a bit of a fight, of course, because we have our preferences. So it would be a great thing if Teams and Slack could integrate, so that you don't need to use Teams or don't need to use Slack to start communicating.
Yeah.
And that's actually a big topic with Salesforce as well, because they just acquired Slack. And one of the big topics now is how do you integrate Salesforce with Slack?
Oh, really?
Yeah. That is one of the hottest topics right now in development circles. And there are things coming that will hopefully make integrating with Slack somewhat easier. I'm not sure if Teams will be able to take advantage of those, but it would definitely be interesting, because we always have the problem of how do we communicate? Do we use Slack? Do we use Google? I started with Google because I had
the Google Chat, the Google Chat thing.
Yeah, because I didn't need anything more than that until customers started inviting me to Teams and to Slack and all that. Now I have all three.
Yeah, there you go.
And at some point I had a Zoom account as well.
Yeah. So these are examples of environments where integration would benefit everyone.
Yeah, most definitely. Yeah. No, I think the team Slack really, I think that would probably resonate with a lot of people. Jumping in between them for sure. Definitely.
I'm sure someone is building such an integration at the moment. We'll offer it.
Well, if they are, they can also include ICQ and MIRC.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Very well.
Yeah, so I know we started the podcast today with some advice from our previous guest. So I think now would be interesting to hear perhaps a little bit of your advice that we can ask our next guest on the podcast. So that being said, do you have any advice, any integration advice?
Well, absolutely. I think the thing that's helped me most in recent projects has been to not just form the relationships with whatever system it is that you're integrating with, but actively invite them to be part of the design of the integration. Now, granted, you cannot do this with everyone, but if you do have connections, or if you don't, then form them And if you do, then ask for their opinion, because they might know something that you don't, and that could save a project.
So yeah, to summarize, bringing more people in, getting more opinions in.
Yeah. So they can lift a bit the kimono, so that you can understand how the things work behind the scenes, and that can improve your integration path, right? So sometimes it's easier to create one object and that you have to create all the objects one after the other, right?
Sometimes you might discover that certain things exist that you didn't know. Just the other couple of weeks ago, I was on a design call, and the client brought in someone from a system that they're using to join our integration discussion. And it turns out there is entire functionality that no one was aware of, not the client, not me, no one. And it was already there, and that saved us several days, weeks of work, possibly.
Yeah. Well, would you do like the implementation of the integration itself together with someone from the vendor? Well, if that's possible, of course, from budget wise.
I think both parties, if you're playing an equal role in the project, then both parties should play an equal role in the implementation. That way, both parties are responsible. Both parties can hold each other in check to make sure that they're doing whatever lifting they need to do. If it was all down to just one party, then you're putting your faith in them, which is great, but I don't know who they are. I didn't hire them. I didn't interview them.
No, no, true. And it's not only for the type of integration that you're looking at, where you integrate two applications and their functionalities. It's also what we see in our cross-company integrations, that projects which are being handled by both by people from both companies, and they run together that integration project, then the results are more quickly achieved. Yeah. Okay. Good advice. A good start, I think, George. What do you think?
Yeah, definitely for next time, for sure. Yeah, we'll take that and run with it for sure. Thanks. Perfect. All right, we'll wrap things up there then. So thank you, Amnon, for joining us very much, and thanks, Francis, as well. So I appreciate it, and yeah, we'll be back soon with another episode.
All right. Thank you, George.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Amnon.
Thanks for tuning into Exalate's podcast, Integration Talks, a podcast that covers all things integration. For more information, check out our resources on exalate.com and stay tuned for our upcoming episodes. Until next time.